Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
And welcome to another episode of Indie Beacon Radio. I'm your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and today we have Victor Alvarez with us. And Victor has written some interesting stories, some that are fictional and some that appear not to be fictional. We'll get into those. Welcome, Victor. We appreciate you being with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's start right off the bat. You have a Western called The Huntsman. Tell us about it.
The Western is it's called Kill Slade. That's the Western. And that's about a Texas Ranger whose wife was killed in his house and he was left for dead. And he seeks his vengeance on the outlaws that killed her. And along with the group of the Texas Rangers, they set out after them.
All right. Since I'm seeing The Huntsman with a cowboy on the cover, I assumed it was a Western, so apparently it's not. But that is your first one.
No, the first one is The Huntsman.
Right, the one that has the cowboy on.
Right, exactly. The yellow with the yellow in the back.
Right. So tell us about it.
That was my first book. I started writing that back when I was bounty hunting in Tucson, Arizona, back in the '80s, and taking care of my files and so forth. And it was my bondsman. She asked me to write my stories, and I started. But it wasn't until 2015 that I finally put it all together. I put 4 stories, some not so good, some more action adventure. But I put 4 stories, and I deleted. I didn't want to put all of them into there, and I wrote the second book, No Time to Kill, which is a sequel to it.
And you have 6 stories in that one.
I have 6 stories in that one, yes.
Okay, so you were a bounty hunter, but let's back it up and explain how you got to that point. Because originally you were born in Puerto Rico, and your family moved to New York. You had planned on being a cop, but as you say, that didn't quite happen that way. Why don't you get here and tell us the rest?
Well, I graduated from high school, and I decided to be a police officer. I worked the other side of the fence. I used to run away from cops in New York City. I was a gang member in New York, and like I said, I was running away from cops. But decided to be a cop in New York City. But fortune would have it, I got called in for active service. I was drafted. So I stayed in 2 years. Started out as a indirect fire crewman, mortars, 81 millimeter mortars. Went through jump school and went to Ranger school, but never was assigned to a Ranger unit. I had a bad fall in one of my last jumps, and I was reclassified as a military police officer. And from there, I gradually worked my way through the ranks, patrolman, desk sergeant, what have you. And finally, I was accepted into the CID program. I became a criminal investigator, and I did 21 years of that.
And if I understand correctly, during that time, you were actually studying your college degree for criminal investigation or criminal studies, correct?
Criminal justice, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay,
yes.
So that worked out really well that you ended up being in the military police and still got to be a cop, just a slightly different one. But from that perspective, that's what got you into being a bounty hunter, or did you retire and become a cop first? Tell us a little more.
Well, I retired in 1984 as a military police officer. Then I found my way to Tucson, Arizona, and looking for some work to do. So I decided to apply for my private investigator's credentials in the state of Arizona. And one thing led to another. I was working with a criminal lawyer and a civil lawyer doing divorce cases, following the male or the female. And eventually, I was picked up by a bail bondsman by the name of Lupita Sexto Montiel, and she asked me to be her bounty hunter. And one thing led to another. I started doing that. Then I started branching out to other bail agents, AAA bail bonds predominantly, and it went from there.
Okay. Now, let's go back to your first one, The Huntsman. And that has, you said, 4 stories. Would you consider those as short stories or novellas?
Short stories, not novellas, right?
Okay. And of those 4, you said some good, some not so good. So does that mean you had some stories that you weren't overly thrilled about doing, or what? Give us a little more.
Well, not really. What I was saying would be that some of them have more action in it, more shootings, more knifings, and so forth. So those are the ones that I really put in there.
Okay, so more action-packed, as they say. So
Exactly.
these obviously were some really bad criminals if they're involved in gunshots and all these other things.
Well, yes, I was trailed and almost shot up by a gang of cartels from Mexico. They were after the same person that I was after.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the cartel, and we'll get back into that because that, I think, plays into Kill Slade, but we'll come back to that one. So in No Time to Kill, you have 6 stories there. Again, the same type of action and all that stuff?
Yes, a little bit more action. Yeah.
You were a bounty hunter for what, about 15, 20 years?
No, I was a bounty hunter for about 9 years.
So that was a very eventful 9 years.
Yes, it was. Very. And it was hard on the family. It was hard on the family. It was hard for me because a lot of the times I was out on the road doing surveillance for 12 hours, 9 to 12 hours, and then I go back at nighttime and get my man, so to speak.
I bet you were kind of wondering why you retired from the military at that point.
Well, I spent 21 years and I just didn't find it that exciting anymore, and so I need a little bit more juice, so to speak.
Definitely got it in that 9 years. I would definitely say so.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have then Kill Slade, which involves a gang, but not the typical gang that we understand. So tell us a little bit about that one.
They call the Hatcher Gang, and there are 2 brothers. Actually, there's 3. In the sequel to Kill Slade, we'll meet the 3rd Hatcher brother, but that's the one I'm working on currently. And the Hatcher gangs, what happened with Slade was that he was involved in a card game, and the cousin to the Hatcher gangs called him a cheat. He drew, Slade shot him. So the 2 brothers, the Hatcher brothers, decided to seek vengeance, so to speak. And they found Slade in his home, in his ranch, with his wife. They shot her and left him for dead.
About what time period would you say this was set in?
1881.
Okay. And now, is this based on any fact as far as those type of characters, or?
Yes. I did some research on the outlaw gangs of the Central Texas at those times, and I changed the names a little bit, but they were as bad as I put them in the book.
Now, you didn't add any from the years of dealing with cartels or anything. I mean, as far as being bad.
A little bit. A little bit. I blemished it a little bit, yes.
But I'm sure that reality of dealing with those cartels when you were a bounty hunter did come through in the story.
Yes, they did. But the thing is, I took a lot of the towns in Central Texas, and these are actual towns, and some of the towns don't exist anymore. But back in those days, they did, and I just glorified the town, so to speak, in my book.
So finding those towns, I assume you had to do some heavy-duty research to really
Yes.
understand it, old maps and stuff like that.
Exactly. I had to pull the old maps of the 1800s.
How long did that take you to research?
Oh, I say about 2 months.
Now, in your research, because you have the Texas Rangers involved, did you research that as well?
Oh yes, I did. I even went to Waco to the Texas Rangers Museum.
Okay.
That's how I opened the book.
And obviously, your main character in Kill Slade, hopefully I'm not giving away too much, does become a Texas Ranger because...
Exactly. He was a Texas Rangers before he went to the involved with the Civil War. And he was involved in the Civil War, also involved with Leander McNeely, which is a very famous Texas Ranger. He had that big shootout over the Noosa Strip down in South Texas. And I put Slade in there with him. Okay. So it's more of a historical fiction type Western.
So he gets married and decides to pull off from the Rangers, but unfortunately is dragged back in.
Exactly how it happened.
Okay. Well, it's time to take a break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
What started as a love letter to her son has become an international love letter for all parents to their children. Now you can read acclaimed author Shanalee Charbonneau's story to your children. When her son was very sick, she calmed him by singing her own song to him. She turned that song into the book, My Mama Loves Me, I'm Her Little Boy. She wrote 3 more magical books for all parents and kids 6 and under. Available at Indie Lecter, Amazon, and all local and national outlets.
Hello, I am the author and poet Denise Bryson. I am the author of The Things That Cross My Mind, Love's Reality, both in book and audio form. I am also noted as one of the best poets of 2011. I have 2 new projects coming up. One is the Blinky series, where Blinky tells us all about our coins and our bills for our children. I also have a book coming out called Say Ye. It's quotes from Denise Bryson, just inspirational and that will help you along the way.
Thank you for watching or listening to this show. Indie Lecter is proud to sponsor this programming. As a thank you for listening or watching, we would like to give you a 10% coupon code that you can use on our bookstore at indielecter.store. Use coupon code VIDEO19. Again, that's indielecter.store, coupon code VIDEO19 for a 10% discount on any purchase. Thank you.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow.
And welcome back to the continuing episode of Indie Beacon Radio. We have with us today, Victor Alvarez. We've been talking about his books. The last one we were just talking about is Kill Slade. And you mentioned, Victor, that you are working on a sequel. So tell us a little bit about that.
The sequel involves the 3rd brother of the Hatcher gang, the Hatchers, and he has a gang of renowned outlaws. And I researched the outlaws of those days and put them in context with the Texas Rangers and Slade. And the gang, the Hatcher brother, was already in jail in Waco, and they escaped. they learned that their two brothers were killed by a Texas Ranger by the name of John Slade, and they go after him. But he has other plans. So they decided to rob a couple of stagecoaches, a couple of trains. They murdered a couple of people. They were bad outlaws. So Slade decided to go after them.
Okay. Now, do you have a time frame when that might be available?
That should be available by next year, probably. I would say about March or April.
Okay. Now, is that the one that's on the bottom there called Requiem Dead?
No, that's different. That's Requiem for the Dead is a female lead, and she is a CID agent, just like I used to be, and along with a DEA sidekick, they try to stop the bombing of North Korea by a rogue U.S. general.
Okay. He got tired of the group that's in charge there and decided to get rid of them, and they had to stop him.
I'm trying to branch out.
Now, it must be interesting going from real life, as you did in your first two books, to Western now with two books, and then back to real life. I mean, that must be a challenge to write.
Oh, it definitely was. I mean, there were times that I couldn't separate both.
You were finding yourself writing a little Western in that CID aspect or something?
Yeah, exactly. I used to get writer's block, and I couldn't go from one to the other. I had to stop and then come back.
Now, your characters, obviously, a lot of them are coming from real life aspects. So let's start with the newest one, Requiem for the Dead. Being in CID, you knew a lot of officers. I assume there might have been a female officer you knew that you kind of focusing on?
There was one. Yeah, she was a very good officer, and I kind of more or less got a little bit out of her. And she was very beautiful, and so is Sinclair in the novel. And her father is the provost marshal. The provost marshal is just like a small town sheriff in the military.
And that's kind of like for the base sheriff type thing.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Has she read any of it yet?
Excuse me?
Has she read any of the book yet?
No, I sent it to the CID command so they could look it over before I had it sent to the publisher. Yeah.
Get the approval, make sure you didn't spill any beans or anything.
Make sure I didn't make any mistakes.
Yeah, the military is very cautious about that. So
yes, exactly.
So Requiem Dead, you're hoping will be out when?
Requiem for the Dead should be out in March of next year.
So you're going to have two books out at the same time.
Correct.
That's going to be a challenge because they're totally different genres. How are you going to handle marketing those?
I don't know. I don't know yet. Cross that bridge when I get to it, I guess.
Okay. And with those two getting ready to come out, are you working on another one?
I'm working on the sequel to Requiem for the Dead with Sinclair, Jacqueline Sinclair.
Okay. The character's talking in your brain and saying you need to keep writing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I already have the prologue and 3 chapters already done on it.
Okay. So is there anything you can tell us about it?
It starts out with a Navy SEAL team going after a Russian spy who's also an American spy, so he's a dual spy, and he's in jail. So the SEAL team goes in there to rescue him, and a communique was caught by the transmitting agency of the MI, military intelligence, which can cause, if it gets out, it could cause World War III. I'll leave it at that.
You're leaving it on a heavy subject matter there. So.
Yes. Yes.
a little bit of a tease to get people interested. Then after that, do you have any others that you're working on?
Like I said, I'm working on the second Slade, the second Sinclair novel, but after that, no. So far, nothing.
Those two are keeping you busy as it is.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Cool. Going through the aspect, it would seem a bit of a challenge having to go back on your past memories of all the different things you've done to write these stories and stuff like that. Are you able to keep up with the latest trends and information with the CID and other things like that?
Oh yes, sir. Oh yes, sir. I have. I still have friends in the CID program. I still have a couple of officers that are in the 545th Military Police Company. That's the company I was in Vietnam. With the CID field office, the 545th. So I still have friends that I keep in contact with. They keep me abreast of what's new, and I also do my research on those equipment, especially the equipment, the weapons that I list in these stories are all actual weapons, especially the SEAL team weapons. Some of those are classified. But I've got my hands on a couple of the specifications, so I included them in the book.
Now, have you used any of them in test shooting or military shootings?
I have used all weapons except the new M4 assault weapon.
Okay, so you're able to write from the experience of using those guns and give that true feeling of what the characters are going through.
Oh yes, absolutely. Especially when I say I changed the mag and jacked another round in it and jacked the charger. So everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say the charger, and especially the military, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Now, okay, so that brings up a good question. For those that are not military, would they understand what that is, or do you describe it in the stories?
I do describe it, yes.
Good. So they're not left in the dark, which is really good. You keep them along with the story and
Exactly.
inform.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, this is a perfect time for us to take another break, and we'll be right back.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to care for a loved one? I'm Charlotte Kenyon, award-winning author of the book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents. That was a question I had to ask myself some 16 years ago, and you'll have to ask the same question. I had a father-in-law with dementia, a mother with Alzheimer's, and a dad with Parkinson, all at the same time.
What would you do if you found out everyone on the town council were thieves and murderers? That's what happened in Bandera, Texas in 1873. John Cruder was the marshal, yet he needed to operate outside the law in order to balance the scales of justice. He is the Midnight Marauder. You can find his books on Amazon.com and TopWesterns.com in paperback, digital, and audio. I'm Roy Clinton, and I hope you'll read The Midnight Marauder.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
All right, welcome back. We're at the final stages of Indie Beacon Radio with our guest, Victor Alvarez. We've been talking about his books, which started off with The Huntsman, which is 4 stories about his time as a bounty hunter. Then he has The No Time to Kill, which is 6 stories of him being a bounty hunter, and these are true stories. Then it goes into Kill Slade, which is a Western about a gentleman who loses his wife and many other people through the course of the story, and also is a Texas Ranger previously and then comes back to one. There is then The Requiem for the Dead, which is about a CID officer, and a story about, well, I'm not going to go too far. They can watch the show to go back on it. But you've got also then the 2 sequels to Kill Slade and to the Requiem of the Dead coming out. So that's a lot of work that you're doing, which is great. But how can people find you and, of course, find ways to buy the books?
No. My books are on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, the Indie Lector store, also on my Facebook page. They could get a hold of me and order the books.
Great. And just
also,
go ahead.
Also in Kill Slade and No Time to Kill, both of those books have been converted into audiobooks.
Great. And just so our viewers know, our sponsor, Indie Lecture Store, does offer a discount, a 10% coupon code on the commercial, so write it down, and then you can use it to get a couple of his books. You have Facebook and other forums that people can reach out to you to learn more about the process?
I'm on Facebook. It's Victor Manuel Alvarez, Bounty Hunter. And they could find me there on Facebook. My website is thehuntsmansnovel.com. They could also order the books through there.
Okay. With the couple minutes we have left, do you have any words of encouragement for someone who wants to get into writing?
To writing. Writing, it's a chore. You have to research everything that you could think of, and then try to put it together. And the first thing I do when I get a story in my mind is to write an outline of the story and list my characters that I think would fit into the story, and then give them a background story to their life. So I could bring it to life in the pages. It's a heavy work, but it's enjoyable. I love writing.
Right. So I'm going to ask this: what about bounty hunting? If any words of encouragement on that one, or do you encourage them not to?
Well, no. As a matter of fact, in my blog, I've been asked by several people, how do I get into the bounty hunting work? And in my blog, I list the things that a person should do first before he decides to become a bounty hunter. There was an incident in Phoenix, Arizona in 1979 where a trio of bounty hunters, a father and son, went after an individual. The individual ran away, and the father and the son shot him in the back. They were charged with murder. So you have to be careful. The law says that you can use any force necessary next to lethal, next to death, to bring down your bail jumper. So you got to know the law. The law is still good since 1873. And yeah, so it's the Constitution. The Supreme Court was the one who wrote the law, and it gives the bounty hunter the right to bypass the police and storm the house in front of the police, and they can't do anything to stop you from going into that house and dragging out your bail jumper. So you got to be careful. You got to know the law. You got to know the law where you work at. Plus, you got to know the law of other states that you might find yourself going after the jumper. So it's a pretty sticky situation. You got more leeway than the police officers do. Police officers need warrants. Bounty hunter doesn't. So you need experience, either as a police officer, military, with enough gumption and to go after a certain individual. I had one that was 6'3", 210 pounds, and the way I did it, I took his legs out, and then brought him in. So.
That can work. Well, you've definitely got the experience, and with 2 books of stories, 10 different stories between them. I mean, a lot of information that people can enjoy reading and learning more about, but then you also have the others, Kill Slade and Requiem of Dead. I want to thank you very much for being on the show, and we will hopefully see you soon when the new ones come out.
Well, it was an honor, Alan. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.